The spotlights beamed down on the crowded auditorium as Kamala Harris stepped up to the microphone, her expression tight with frustration that few had anticipated. What unfolded next left the audience stunned. The Vice President of the United States appeared on the verge of an onstage breakdown, raising her voice at a fellow Democrat in front of thousands. But this wasn't just an isolated moment of anger. It was the breaking point after months of private tension that had been simmering like a pot ready to boil over. Harris had been under growing pressure, falling approval numbers, constant criticism, and increasing doubts about her leadership. The stress was becoming clear, and everyone in the room was about to witness how deeply it had taken its toll. Just steps away stood Jasmine Crockett, composed and steady, prepared for what was coming. She didn't yet realize that her calm, measured response would not only halt Harris in her tracks, but spark one of the most widely shared political moments of the year. The audience grew silent as Harris's voice climbed to a sharp, uncomfortable pitch. What made the scene even more surprising was the context. This gathering was supposed to highlight unity and collaboration among Democrats. Instead, it was about to turn into a very public clash, one that would elevate one woman's profile while severely damaging the others. "You think you know more than me?" Harris snapped, her words echoing across the room. "You're just a freshman representative who has no idea how this system really works." What Crockett said in response would change everything. Her reply, calm and precise, left Harris speechless and sent the room into an uproar. This wasn't a routine disagreement. It was the start of a defining moment that would alter how Americans viewed both women. What most people in that auditorium didn't know was that this confrontation had been developing for months. Harris had been making dismissive remarks about Crockett to other Democratic figures, labeling her overly ambitious and suggesting she needed to understand her place in the party. Crockett had heard these comments, but instead of responding in kind, she chose to focus on her work. Ironically, Harris's behavior was exactly what frustrated many voters, politicians more concerned with maintaining control than addressing public needs. Crockett, by contrast, represented a younger generation focused on policy and service. This clash would highlight that difference in the most public way imaginable, witnessed live by thousands and replayed online by millions within hours. Before diving further into this story, make sure to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss more political coverage. You'll want to see every detail of what comes next, because this confrontation is unlike anything you've seen before. Now, let's break down how Kamala Harris lost control and how Jasmine Crockett's sharp response left everyone stunned. To grasp why this exchange mattered so much, you first need to understand who these two women are. Kamala Harris, the sitting vice president, had long built her reputation on being tough, strategic, and composed. From her years as a California prosecutor to her role in the Senate, she was respected for sharp questioning and her ability to handle pressure. But recently, her image had shifted. Polling declined, criticism piled up, and the weight of it all was becoming visible. Facing her was Jasmine Crockett, a first-term representative from Texas. At just 42, she had quickly earned a reputation as a bold and thoughtful leader, unafraid to challenge authority. Intelligent, articulate, and steady under pressure, she had emerged as one of the most respected younger voices in the party. The venue was the Democratic Leadership Conference, where top party members were meant to present unity and strategy. Instead, it would become the stage for one of the most damaging public breakdowns in recent memory. The underlying conflict had been intensifying for weeks. Harris was pushing a political strategy focused on appealing to moderates by compromising on progressive issues. Crockett and many younger Democrats rejected that approach, seeing it as abandoning the principles that defined their campaigns. Behind closed doors, discussions had been heated. Crockett respectfully opposed Harris's plan, presenting polling Data from her district and beyond showing voters wanted Democrats to lean further left, not pull back. Harris brushed it off, calling Crockett inexperienced and unable to see the bigger picture. The rift grew when Crockett's proposals began gaining support among colleagues. Harris viewed this as a challenge to her authority and openly criticized newcomers who think they know better. Mediation attempts by other Democrats failed, as Harris avoided direct dialogue. Meanwhile, Crockett was gaining national recognition for her clear, composed responses in congressional hearings. Media outlets praised her as a potential future leader of the party, further irritating Harris. Reports from those close to the vice president suggested she saw Crockett as a threat and was determined to assert her seniority. The irony was that Crockett had consistently shown respect toward Harris, even seeking private discussions to ease tensions. Harris declined. Instead, she chose to make their differences public, convinced her position and experience would carry weight. She was about to find out otherwise. The conference hall was packed with over 2,000 Democrats, leaders, donors, activists, and media. The event was being live-streamed nationwide, with major outlets watching closely. The expectation was a polished showcase of unity. What unfolded instead would dominate political news for weeks and reshape public perception of both figures. The guest list included prominent governors, senators, and influential activists. Many had paid substantial sums to attend, anticipating an inspiring program. Instead, they found themselves witnessing one of the most unprofessional scenes in recent political memory. Ironically, it had been the audience's request to see Harris and Crockett appear together as a symbol of the party bridging old leadership with new. The stakes could not have been higher, and the media presence ensured that whatever happened would reach millions. As Harris took the stage, it was obvious something was wrong. Her usual composure was gone. Her hands trembled slightly, her jaw was tight, and her expression suggested she was about to lose control. Those familiar with her later said they had never seen her in this state, not during Senate hearings, not on the campaign trail. Sharing the stage with Crockett seemed to bring her frustration to the surface. Even the physical setup highlighted the divide. Both women seated at opposite ends of a long table, separated by distance under harsh lights that made the atmosphere feel more like confrontation than collaboration. Behind the scenes, Harris's team had worried about this event. Some even advised her to avoid sharing a panel with Crockett. Harris refused, confident she could assert her authority. It was a decision that would backfire dramatically. The first clear sign of trouble came as Harris began her opening remarks. Instead of the usual polished delivery that people expected, Harris's remarks carried an edge that immediately unsettled the audience. She began speaking about loyalty and knowing one's place in a way that made many shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Some people in this party," she said, her voice rising with each phrase, "think they can just show up and start making demands. They believe that because they've won one election, they suddenly know how to run the country." The cameras turned to Crockett, seated in the front row. She was calm, attentive, and clearly aware that Harris was targeting her, though she didn't react. Hands folded, she watched with a steady gaze that signaled she was ready for whatever came next. Harris pressed on. "There's a difference between being confident and being arrogant. There's a difference between having good ideas and believing you know everything." By this point, the audience was visibly uneasy. This was supposed to be a unity conference, yet Harris's speech felt more like an attack. Low murmurs spread through the hall. Some people glanced at their phones, debating whether to record the moment. Others watched Crockett closely, waiting for her response. Then Harris paused, looked directly at Crockett, and said, "Some people need to remember that respect is earned, not given, and some haven't earned a thing yet." The auditorium went silent. Everyone knew the comments had just become personal. Crockett stood slowly, moving with calm precision. She walked toward the stage as if she had been prepared for this confrontation all along. As Crockett approached, the microphone meant for the Q&A session, Harris's demeanor shifted. The contained frustration gave way to something rawer, less controlled. "Don't you dare!" Harris said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Don't you dare think you can just walk up here." But Crockett kept walking. She adjusted the microphone and waited. The room froze. Dozens of phones appeared as audience members prepared to capture what was clearly going to be replayed endlessly online. Harris was now visibly shaken. Whatever composure remained was slipping away, and everyone could see it. Photographers captured every detail: Harris's rising agitation, her strained expression, her movements that seemed increasingly uncontrolled. The sense in the room was unmistakable. This was a moment people would remember for years. The contrast between the two women only sharpened the tension. Harris looked visibly unsteady, her gestures exaggerated, her tone shrill. Crockett, in contrast, remained composed, her posture upright, her expression calm. Later, attendees would describe the atmosphere as charged, almost electric. "You want to say something?" Harris shouted, her voice carrying across the hall without needing the microphone. "You think you have something important to add? Well, let me tell you something about importance." The audience gasped. Some covered their mouths in shock. Others tapped furiously on their phones. This was not the behavior expected from a vice president at a national event. Yet Harris continued, her tone sharper with each word, her face twisted with frustration. Camera crews struggled to decide what to capture: Harris losing her temper, Crockett's calm reaction, or the stunned faces of the audience. In the end, they recorded it all, creating footage that analysts would dissect for weeks to come. Meanwhile, Crockett didn't flinch. She remained steady, not moving, not speaking until Harris had said her piece. Her composure was so striking that even some of Harris's longtime supporters in the audience grew uncomfortable. To them, it no longer looked like political debate. It looked like bullying, played out on a national stage. Then came the breaking point. Harris raised her voice to a shout. "You think you know better than me? You're nothing. You're a nobody who got lucky with one election. You don't know anything about real leadership." The audience gasped again. Some rose to their feet in disbelief. The Vice President of the United States was publicly berating a fellow Democrat in front of thousands, with cameras rolling. It felt like political self-destruction in real time. But Harris pressed on, pointing directly at Crockett. "I've been fighting for this party since before you even knew what politics was. I was a prosecutor when you were still figuring out your career. And you think you can walk in here and tell me how things should be done?" The hall was stunned into silence. Phones recorded every second. The clip was destined to circulate within minutes. When Harris finally paused to catch her breath, Crockett leaned toward the microphone. Her voice was steady, respectful, and calm. "Madam Vice President," she said, "I think you might want to sit down and take a breath." The simplicity of her words immediately shifted the mood. After minutes of shouting, Crockett's composed reply made Harris appear completely out of control by comparison. But Harris fired back, shouting even louder. "Don't tell me to sit down. I don't take orders from you. You work for me. This entire party works for me." That's when Crockett delivered the line that would make this exchange historic. In the same calm tone, she responded, "Madam Vice President, with all due respect, nobody here works for you. We work for the American people. And right now, the American people are watching you lose control on national television simply because someone disagreed with you." The crowd reacted with a collective murmur, part shock, part recognition that they had just witnessed something extraordinary. The difference between the two women was unmistakable. Harris, red-faced and yelling, appeared unhinged. Crockett, steady and calm, looked like the only composed leader on stage. The media section was in chaos. Reporters scrambled to document every moment, while camera operators zoomed in on both women's faces. They knew these images would be seen by millions within hours. What made Crockett's words resonate even more was her delivery. She paused before speaking, letting Harris's outburst settle in the air. Then, when she finally spoke, her voice was clear and unshaken, amplifying the contrast. "I came here today," Crockett continued, "to have a respectful discussion about our party's future. But if shouting at me is your idea of leadership, that says more about your style than—" "It does about mine." Harris tried to respond, but her anger overwhelmed her words. You can't. "I am the Vice President," she shouted, her tone desperate and incoherent. The moment had crystallized. This was no longer the measured frustration she began with. It had turned into open panic. She seemed aware that control of the moment was slipping away. Yet instead of regaining composure, she leaned harder into the very behavior that was damaging her credibility. Members of the audience were visibly uncomfortable. Some even covered their faces, unable to keep watching. The second-hand embarrassment spread through the room. What made it worse was Harris repeating, "I am the Vice President," as if her title alone could settle the matter. But titles lose meaning when actions contradict the dignity that title represents. In just a few minutes, Crockett displayed more qualities of steady leadership than Harris had managed throughout the exchange. Crockett responded with calm respect. "Yes, you are, and that's exactly why this behavior is concerning. The American people deserve better than this." The crowd went silent, broken only by the sound of phone cameras recording. Everyone recognized this was a career-defining moment, but not in the way Harris might have hoped. Harris tried once more to take back control. "You think you're so clever? You think you can humiliate me in front of all these people?" she snapped. Crockett's reply was measured. "Madame Vice President, I'm not embarrassing you. You're embarrassing yourself. And more importantly, our party and our country. I'll return to my seat now, and I hope you reflect on whether this is how you want to represent your office." Before Crockett could step away, Harris made another desperate attempt. "You don't understand the weight of real leadership. You've never made the hard choices. You've never carried the burden of a nation." Crockett paused, turned back, and delivered the line that would echo across the country. "Madam Vice President, leadership isn't about the weight you bear. It's about how you bear it. And right now, you're showing everyone you can't. Manage pressure without striking out at those you should be working with." The silence was overwhelming. Harris herself seemed to recognize she had been decisively outmatched. Her face drained of color as the realization set in. Crockett calmly walked back to her seat, leaving Harris alone on stage, visibly trembling with anger. The entire auditorium watched in shock as the sitting vice president was outclassed by a first-term representative who never raised her voice or spoke disrespectfully. The moderator quickly called for a recess, but the damage was already done. In under 10 minutes, Harris had lost credibility, while Jasmine Crockett had shown the kind of composure people hoped to see from public leaders. The immediate aftermath was unlike anything the audience had ever experienced. As soon as recess was called, the room erupted. Phones out, cameras flashing, conversations buzzing. Within minutes, footage of the exchange was spreading online at a pace few could track. The hashtag shot to the top of trending lists within an hour. Clips of Crockett's composed responses against Harris's shouting were being shared thousands of times. People were struck not just by Crockett's calm, but by the strength of her words. The spread was unlike typical political moments, which often take days to build momentum. This was instant. The contrast was too sharp, the moment too striking. A side-by-side video showing Harris yelling while Crockett remained calm drew over 2 million views in 3 hours. Another viral clip captured Harris's voice growing shrill, while Crockett's tone stayed steady, quickly turned into a meme about composure versus collapse under pressure. Crockett's remark about serving the American people rather than Harris was shared over 100,000 times in just 2 hours, with users praising her professionalism. But Harris's clips went viral for all the wrong reasons. A video of her shouting, "You're nothing, you're a nobody," circulated with comments of disbelief. "This is our vice president?" Perhaps the most damaging was a montage showing Harris's face reddening and contorting as the confrontation dragged on, paired with dramatic music. It was viewed over 500,000 times in 6 hours, labeled by many as a complete breakdown. Even lip readers joined the conversation, claiming Harris had muttered insults not caught by microphones. Whether accurate or not, that video drew $300,000 views and added further controversy. Memes followed quickly. One placed Harris's outburst beside a toddler's tantrum with the caption, "Spot the difference." Another contrasted Crockett's calm expression with Harris's anger under the words, "When you're the adult in the room." More damaging still was a compilation comparing Harris's meltdown to past clips where she criticized others for losing their temper. The double standard was undeniable and widely shared. The difference between the two women could not have been clearer. Harris appeared unhinged and unprofessional. Crockett appeared steady, respectful, and presidential. The visuals were devastating for Harris and a breakthrough for Crockett. Within 6 hours, major networks were leading with the story. Headlines were brutal for Harris. Vice President melts down at Democratic event. Harris screams at fellow. Democrat in stunning outburst. Public breakdown raises questions about stability. Coverage of Crockett, however, was glowing. Rising star shows composure under fire. Freshman representative's calm response wins praise. Crockett demonstrates. True leadership. Analysts called it career-defining for both women, but in opposite directions. For Harris, potentially career-ending. For Crockett, the moment she emerged as a national figure. The fallout for Harris was swift. Within 24 hours, 3 major Democratic donors publicly questioned her fitness for office. 2 prominent senators issued statements of concern. Reports suggested even members of Harris's staff felt embarrassed by what had unfolded. The response for Crockett was the reverse. Donations to her campaign surged 400% within 2 days. Her social media following grew by over 200,000. Senior Democratic leaders began contacting her to take on larger roles. The longer-term impact became undeniable. Harris's approval ratings, already struggling, dropped 15 points within a week. Worse was the lasting perception that she could not manage pressure or disagreement, fatal traits for a political leader. What sealed the damage was the sheer number of recordings. Professional cameras, phone videos, and security footage all told the same story from every angle. The vice president had clearly lost control, while a freshman representative demonstrated striking composure and leadership. The clash also created a rift inside the Democratic Party that hadn't existed before. Senior, more established Democrats suddenly found themselves in the awkward position of defending Harris's behavior. At the same time, younger Democrats rallied around Crockett, holding her up as the kind of leadership they wanted moving forward. Some party leaders tried to minimize the fallout, framing it as a misunderstanding or saying both women had simply spoken with passion. But these explanations fell flat, especially since the video evidence told a very different story. Meanwhile, Crockett's profile only grew. She was invited to headline major Democratic events nationwide. Party figures who had never heard of her before began seeking her perspective on key policy debates. Practically overnight, she went from an unfamiliar freshman lawmaker to one of the most respected voices in her party. The episode also triggered a wider discussion about temperament and leadership in American politics. Many people pointed to Crockett's measured response as the kind of thoughtful, respectful leadership the country needs. Her ability to stay calm and dignified while being shouted at resonated deeply with voters who had grown tired of constant political drama and personal attacks. What made Crockett's response even more remarkable was that she managed to project the very quality many seasoned politicians struggle to achieve. She appeared presidential, while the sitting vice president looked anything but. Political science professors quickly began using the moment as a teaching tool, showing how tone, word choice, and body language can completely reshape public perception of a leader. The exchange became a case study in political communication. Universities started adding the footage to their curricula, emphasizing the importance of composure under pressure. Communication experts dissected every detail, from posture to facial expression to speaking style. One political psychology professor wrote a widely shared analysis explaining that Crockett had demonstrated textbook crisis communication, while Harris displayed a complete breakdown of emotional control, troubling in any leader, but particularly alarming for someone in such high office. Body language specialists also weighed in, pointing out that Crockett's steady posture and calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to Harris's erratic gestures and expressions. In terms of nonverbal communication, one expert wrote, Crockett dominated completely, projecting stability, while Harris projected chaos. The incident also raised new concerns about Harris's character that many Americans had not seen before. Her inability to handle disagreement, her tendency to make policy disputes personal, and her apparent belief that her office demanded automatic deference all raised serious doubts about her suitability for higher leadership. Some analysts argued that the moment exposed the real Kamala Harris, someone who couldn't stand being challenged and who viewed politics as personal power instead of public service. Crockett, by contrast, embodied the opposite qualities. She respected the office, even as its holder disrespected her. She focused on service rather than ego, showing calm under extraordinary pressure. Those traits aligned with what voters consistently say they want in their leaders. 3 months. Later, when asked about the event in an interview, Crockett stayed true to form. I have a lot of respect for the vice president and the office she holds, she said. Everyone has difficult days. I hope we can all learn from that moment and move forward in a way that better serves the American people. Harris, however, never fully recovered. She issued a short statement the following day, acknowledging regret for her tone, but she never directly apologized or admitted fault. That only highlighted the contrast between the two women and further damaged her credibility. The confrontation also exposed a generational divide inside the Democratic Party. Younger Democrats rallied around Crockett, viewing her as a new model of leadership focused on substance rather than spectacle. Older Democrats felt compelled to defend Harris, though often without conviction. Political strategists began citing the moment in presentations on crisis management. Crockett's response was described as a masterclass in grace under fire, while Harris's became a cautionary tale of how not to react under pressure. The broader implications for American politics were significant. The event proved that voters are hungry for leaders who remain calm, focus on issues, and resist personal attacks. It also showed how social media can amplify these moments instantly, shaping perception across the country. 6 months later, polling confirmed the impact. Crockett had become one of the most popular Democrats in the nation, with approval ratings matching long-established party leaders. Harris, on the other hand, faced mounting questions from party insiders and voters alike about her future. The shift in fortunes was dramatic. Crockett, once a little-known representative, was suddenly being mentioned as a potential presidential contender. Political betting markets listed odds on her running for higher office, and top donors began reaching out to her team. Harris, meanwhile, grew increasingly isolated. Prominent Democrats distanced themselves, and whispers circulated about whether she should remain on the ticket for the next election. The incident had not only damaged her personal standing, but had also cast doubt on her political judgment and emotional steadiness. The contrast became even clearer at later political events. Crockett consistently earned praise for her thoughtful responses and calm delivery. Harris struggled to rebuild trust, with every appearance bringing fresh comparisons to the moment she lost control, and the comparisons were never favorable. What should have been a routine party conference had turned into a defining event, one that propelled a rising star and deeply wounded a sitting vice president. For the public, the lesson was unmistakable. In politics, as in life, how you handle conflict and pressure reveals more about your character than any speech or slogan. Jasmine Crockett's calm, respectful handling of an unprecedented attack didn't just win her that moment, it earned her lasting respect from millions of Americans. Real strength, viewers concluded, isn't about shouting the loudest or holding the highest office. True strength is about holding your principles and keeping composure even when someone is trying to tear you down in front of the world. Crockett displayed that strength. Harris revealed the opposite. The moment also underscored something essential about modern politics. Voters crave authenticity. They can distinguish between someone performing for the cameras and someone genuinely committed to public service. In this clash, the difference was obvious. As both women continue their political journeys, one thing is certain: this moment changed everything. Harris's political future remains uncertain, while Crockett has emerged as one of the most promising figures in American politics. Their contrasting responses will be remembered for years as a textbook example of what leadership should and should not look like. And if you want to stay updated as this story unfolds and catch the biggest political moments as they happen, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. The political landscape is shifting quickly, and you won't want to miss what comes next in this extraordinary story of leadership, composure, and what it truly means to serve the American people. Don't forget to like this video if you were as stunned as everyone else, and let us know in the comments what you think about these two very different approaches to leadership.